Welcome to the audio blog by Mentor Dolores. Success is a slow process. Somewhere between the highlight reels and the how I built a seven-figure business in 6 months headlines, most of us picked up a quiet, false belief that success, when it's real, tends to arrive fast. It doesn't. Success is a slow process, often invisibly slow for far longer than feels comfortable. And understanding that isn't just a nice reframe. It's often the difference between people who stay the course and people who quit right before the results were about to show up. Why progress feels slow before it compounds. There's a specific, well documented pattern behind why success feels so unrewarding in its early and middle stages. Compounding is non-linear. Early progress feels painfully slow. The middle stretch feels uncertain, even stagnant. It's only in the later stages that growth suddenly feels exponential, and that sudden acceleration isn't luck. It's the delayed consequence of everything that was quietly accumulating underneath the surface the whole time. Human psychology isn't well suited to this kind of timeline. We're wired to respond to immediate feedback and visible results. So when progress is slow and change is subtle, motivation naturally weakens and attention drifts. A 1% improvement on any single day feels meaningless. It doesn't transform your identity, doesn't impress anyone watching, doesn't generate praise. But that same 1% improvement, compounded daily over a year, produces results that are almost impossible to trace back to something that modest. This is often described as the flat part of the curve, the long, uncertain stretch where you're doing the work but the results haven't caught up yet. In that stretch, there are really only two choices: stop or stay consistent. Stopping offers relief immediately. It also quietly costs you everything that consistency was about to produce. The marginal gains principle. One of the clearest real world examples of slow, compounding success comes from British cycling. Coach Dave Brailsford famously transformed his team's results not through one dramatic overhaul, but by improving nearly even aspect of performance by just 1%. Nutrition, sleep, even the fit of a bike seat. None of these individual changes were remarkable on their own. Aggregated together and sustained over time, they produced a level of competitive advantage that looked from the outside like a sudden leap forward. From the inside, it was the accumulation of many unremarkable decisions repeated consistently. This is sometimes called the aggregation of marginal gains, the idea that small, incremental improvements compound over time into results disproportionate to how small each individual step felt. It's the same principle behind why musicians and athletes spend years, not weeks, mastering their craft. Repeated practice solidifies the underlying skill in ways that simply can't be compressed into a shortcut, no matter how motivated someone is to skip ahead. Why patience matters more in the middle than at the start. The beginning of any meaningful pursuit is usually the easiest part to stay motivated for. It's new, it's exciting. The gap between where you are and where you started already feels significant. The middle is harder. The novelty fades, progress slows, and you're no longer energized by the beginning but not yet rewarded by the ending. This middle stretch is precisely where patience matters most and where most people quietly abandon a process that was actually working, simply because a lack of excitement got mistaken for a lack of progress. It's worth being clear about what patience actually means here because it's often confused with something else entirely. Patience is not the same as stubbornness. Patience means giving a genuinely sound process enough time to work. Stubbornness means continuing a process that it's not working or it didn't work, simply because changing course feels like admitting defeat. Success is a slow process for people whose underlying approach is sound. It is not a reason to tolerate a broken one indefinitely. What slow progress actually builds. There's a meaningful difference between success that arrives fast and success that's built slowly. And it's not just about the outcome. It's about who you become in the process. Fast success tends to change your circumstances. Slow, sustained progress tends to change the person doing the work. It deepens patience, clarifies values, and builds confidence rooted in effort rather than luck or good timing. That kind of identity level change holds up even if the external circumstances collapse later, because the capability and mindset built along the way don't disappear with a single setback. Fast success rarely offers that same durability. How to make peace with the slow middle. A few practical shifts make the slow stretch easier to stay in rather than abandon prematurely. Extend your measurement window. Stop judging progress by days or weeks. Measure it in quarters or years, where compounding actually becomes visible. Break ambition into completable actions. Instead of waiting to feel successful, define one result you can finish this week, one draft revised, one conversation scheduled, one section completed. Small, defined actions translate ambition into behavior you can actually see yourself doing. Track the progress or the process, not just the outcome. A visible record of consistent effort, a journal, a habit tracker, a simple log keeps the slow build tangible even when the results themselves are still invisible. Expect the comparison trap and name it when it happens. Slow progress feels most discouraging when it's measured against someone else's highlight reel rather than their actual invisible middle stretch. Everyone's compounding curve looks flat from the outside until it doesn't. The takeaway. Success is a slow process because meaningful change is rarely linear, and the results of consistent effort to tend to stay and the results of consistent effort tend to stay invisible for far longer than feels fair, right up until they don't. The people who make it through that stretch aren't the ones with the most dramatic starts. They're the ones who kept making the unremarkable 1% decisions long enough for them to compound into something undeniable. If you're in the flat, uncertain part of your curve right now, that's not evidence you're failing. It's often evidence you're still early.